Some argue that the Bible is actually pro-choice, in particular the Old Testament. And a passage people point towards, I've had this in conversation, I've had it in debate, is Exodus 21, 22 through 25. Now, you're working on a commentary on the book of Exodus. Let me read these 4 verses, and then you can kind of help us understand what's really going on here.
Yep.
So, again, Exodus 21, verse 22 says, "When men strive together and hit a pregnant woman so that her children come out, but there's no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman's husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if there's harm, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for tooth, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe." Now, before we get your take on this, maybe tell us a little bit some of the different ways that scholars or people will take this passage.
It's fascinating that this passage has become a kind of linchpin in both the pro-choice and pro-life
That's
debate.
true.
Both sides will appeal to it as proof that there's precedent for their approach in the Bible. And really the crux of the matter is this phrase, which in the NIV says, "and she gives birth prematurely," which can be understood as she miscarries or she gives birth to a live baby. And so the big question in this passage is whether the giving birth is a miscarriage and whether the claim of no serious injury is relating to the baby or to the mother, or both.
Or both. Fair enough.
So this is hotly debated today. You can find lots of examples of this online. Those who think that this is a pro-choice passage would say that the word gives birth, which is just yatzah, it comes out. I think we're reading from the ESV. It says her children come out. It is plural, which is surprising. And this come out is assumed to be miscarriage. And so the injury that's being talked about is only injury to the mother. And this seems to, in its greater context, seems to suggest then that a miscarriage is not as weighty as the loss of someone who's already been born. So if a child, even a young boy or girl was killed by someone, there would be vengeance for that killing. But here there doesn't seem to be if you take this as miscarriage. And so this is suggesting, some suggest that this is saying the unborn child isn't worth as much as someone who's born. So then they would use that as a pro-choice argument. Now this passage is certainly not saying, hey, if you want to terminate your pregnancy, go ahead and do it. It's not about voluntary termination of pregnancy. This is, again, a casuistic law. In the NIV, it says, if people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and this happens, here's how you should handle it. The larger section is a series of non-ideal situations in which someone is harmed, and the question is, who's liable for this injury and how much do they have to pay? So this is definitely not just saying, no big deal if you want to terminate your pregnancy. The idea of terminating a pregnancy would have been unthinkable in the ancient world. They're not even imagining a situation in which someone wants to get rid of an unborn child. Their concern is to have as many children as possible because infant mortality rate is high, and the more children they have, the more land can be worked, and the more they'll be taken care of in their old age. So I think to harness this verse in favor of a pro-choice argument is disingenuous.
Okay, so even if this is a miscarriage and there's not the fault to the men who do this, even if that's the case, it's not akin to somebody going in and intentionally saying, I'm going to end the life of the unborn.
Right.
Because it's an accident.
Right. This is accident.
And you could also say, if it's an accident, the intention wasn't to harm the pregnant woman. Right. And so because the consequence is less, it really wouldn't necessarily imply that the unborn has less value. That wouldn't follow logically from it. It still could be a full human being, which we could argue elsewhere, but something more akin to like a manslaughter, which is not intentionally taking a life.
Right.
Hence, the punishment is different.
Yeah.
Now, how do you take this passage? You think life for life is for both?
I do, because the word yatsah, to come out, so it occurs 16 times in the Old Testament in relation to childbirth, and 15 of those times indicate a live birth. So is it possible that this is a miscarriage? Yes, it's possible. But the word for miscarriage does not appear, even though that word appears elsewhere in Exodus. So I would have expected that here if the point is that the baby is dead. It seems to me the point is this is causing a traumatic situation in which the woman was not already in labor, but suddenly she's in labor and giving birth. So again, it's casuistic law. The situation is less than ideal, and we're trying to figure out. Sometimes what casuistic law does is it takes a hypothetical situation, and it's not going to give every possible scenario, but it's going to dream up an extreme scenario. So what if so first it's if two men are fighting, who's liable? Now it's if two men are fighting and someone who's not part of the fight gets hurt, who is it? You know, who's liable for their injury? But instead of just having a regular bystander, it's sort of amplified by saying, and what if it's a woman, and what if she's pregnant? So let's just kind of roll a bunch of questions into one case law so that we can figure out how to reason our way through an ethically complicated situation.
It would seem to me the question to raise, how often does this happen? Like, very rarely?
I would think very rarely.
Now, when you look at how they were camping around the tent in Exodus 21, like there's a proximity that's there.
Yeah, sure.
Which makes me think still it's rarely going to happen, that this is less about the pregnant woman and it's more about saying, hey, if you're getting a fight,
take it outside.
yeah, take it outside, but there's responsibility.
Yes.
Think things through ahead of time, and maybe don't get into such a fight and find another way to solve it. It seems like that's kind of what this example is drawing out.
Yeah. This is more about, hey guys, think ahead, and you're not going to be able to say like, "Oh, I didn't mean to." Because clearly they didn't mean to injure her.
That's a good point.
But even though it's accidental, they're still liable.
So now they're liable because it's been stated, if you do this, you can't play that card.
Exactly.
I've often taken this passage when it says if there's harm to the child and or the woman, life for life, eye for eye. And I could point towards other passages in the Bible that the unborn and science is fully a human being.
Yeah.
Do you take it that way exegetically, or how do you take the harm is actually to both? So if it came out and there was harm to the child, or they harmed the mother on top of what happened, then the punishment needs to fit the crime. Do you take it that way?
Yeah. I mean, the way that I take it is that life for life is related to either the child or the mother or both. Like whoever is harmed, there is going to be a liability. Now, life for life makes it sound like if the child or the mother die, then the perpetrator will have to die. But what we know is that they were allowed to pay a fine instead. If the person who died, if their family says, we don't need to implement the death penalty here, we'll allow you to pay a fine. We see that this wasn't intentional. That was allowed. So it's not like they have to kill the perpetrator.
Okay.
And I think that's helpful to know. This list of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, which is called the lex talionis, is not about, okay, go get revenge.
Right.
It's actually about limiting the vengeance. Because if you just injure my hand, I can't have you put to death. It's making sure that there's a...
Or cut off your hand.
Exactly,
that's
right.
More.
Yes, exactly. So it's making sure that the punishment fits the crime, and it's restraining vengeance.
Which is justice. It's more the principle than the practice, which is why the rest of the law lays out the practice.
Yeah.
It seems kind of obvious to me that what are the lives involved here?
Yeah.
Well, you've got the two men fighting, you have the mom, and you have the child.
Right.
It comes out.
That has come out.
They're all lives.
Yes.
And so the principle here about tooth for tooth, eye for eye applies to all of them. That seems the straightforward, obvious way to take it. I need a good argument to take it differently.
And even the fact that it's plural, children come out, seems like it's amplified the situation even more. What if she's pregnant with twins? right? So what if that bystander is a woman who's pregnant with twins? Like, we're just going to make this as egregious as possible.
That's funny to think about. Casuistic. What if she's pregnant with triplets? We're going to give every conceivable scenario, but really good answer. That's totally helpful.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Want to learn the Bible for yourself? Logos is the library I use every day in my personal life. I start every morning with a physical Bible out and Logos open next to me on my computer, along with a cup of coffee. It is everything you need to go deep and unlock the truth of Scripture and apply it to your life. Check out a free 60-day trial at logos.com/McDowell. Link is in the description.